completely international. So welcome to Leading Edge 2021. I first want to thank all of the team that's on the call, that's admitting people right now and getting everyone settled into the training room. And as we do that, I am going to get our show started for today. So hopefully all of you guys can see that in the chat box. Give me a hello, a thumbs up, howdy, something. Let me know that you can see the PowerPoint and then we're all ready to go. Lou, nice to have you here. Oh, Lou, if even if you saw any of our videos that we did for our promo, Lou's our video guy. So thanks so much, Lou, for showing up. We appreciate it. All right, so to get started, we need to make sure that you have your workbook. So if you need the link, Chelsea or Jen, part of the 304 team, are online to help you. If you have any questions, they're going to provide you with the workbook or anything else that you need. Hi, Teresa, Clarissa, oh, so many great people. Hi, Gray. So good to see you guys here. And there's the workbook link if you need it. So again, we are here for Leading Edge 2021. We started this program last year as a give back to the community because it was a little difficult this time last year. I think all of us were in quarantine and we were trying to figure out how do we support the community. And so what we did is we created Leading Edge to provide free leadership training to our clients and to the community. And honestly, we had so much fun. We decided to make it an annual event. And so here we are this year again, with so many of you who visited us last year have come back this year. If this is your second time visiting us for Leading Edge, let us know that you are a second timer. We would love to know that. So for those who have not met, I am Jennifer Thornton, and I'm the founder and CEO of 304 Coaching. And the most important thing about 304 is we have an incredible team, and you can see our incredible team right here. Chelsea and Jen are in the room helping and supporting you today. But honestly, every single person on this page touched Leading Edge in some way or another. And I just wanted to say to all of you guys, thank you so much. I couldn't do what I do every day without all of you pulling it together and making the company look good. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. All right. Hi, Leslie. Leslie's here. Fantastic. Good to see you. Leslie and I actually met through Leading Edge last year, and now we're friends. Again, why do you not want to do fun stuff like this? It's great. All right, so what to expect? So in your workbook, we have some places where you can take some notes about what to expect. And so with Leading Edge, what you can expect is it will go fast. One of my bad habits is putting too much into the training. So we got to move fast to get through all of it so that you guys can get on with your day. You're going to also learn about competencies and skills and how those need to both be developed as you work through your growth as a leader. You're going to learn about self-coaching questions and immediate steps you can take to influence your behaviors. And we're going to talk about the 304 coaching behavior change model as part of our session today. So obviously, we've all been through a lot of e-learnings in the last year, but just in case these are new to you, I wanted to give you a few tips. Be willing to learn when you come. Be willing to create change. Don't spend time here if you're not willing to create change. We need you to be here and focused and actively participate. You guys are already participating in the chat box, which I appreciate because we're going to talk a lot to each other today during the session through the chat box because I really want you to get the experience of learning from your fellow students. And we all learn here together, especially in today, we're going to talk about growing together and growth mindset. Be challenging, challenge yourself, challenge others, challenge me, make me think. At the end of today, we're going to do some Q&A. I'll also answer questions as they come up in chat as I can. But what you need to know is we're going to push each other today and through all of these sessions to grow. All right, so next up is our philosophy. So at 304, we have a very clear philosophy on how we create behavior change. And this is our behavior change model. How many times have you read a book and thought, man, I'm going to be a whole new person tomorrow. I read this book and I've got all these good ideas. I'm just going to be a whole new person. And you don't change anything and nothing changes. How many of you guys have gone to a conference and they locked you in a room for a day and they taught you really amazing information and you were going to change and you were going to be a new leader the next day and nothing changed? If that's ever been you, drop a yes or uh-huh or oh yeah in the chat box, because I know that's true for myself too. And so when I started thinking about creating 304, yes, oh yeah, all guilty, yeah, all of you guys, for sure, we've all done it because we're human. And so when I decided to embark on this journey of creating a leadership development company, I thought, well, we actually have to create change. How do we do that? And so how we do that is we think about competencies and skills, which is pretty common when you go through training. But we also add in there what we call self-coaching questions. If you have a coach, you can work through these questions with your coach, but you can also use yourself as your coach. And we're going to talk later about why it's important. And then the other thing is we're going to take what we've learned and we're going to instantly do something with it. And that's the only way to create a new neural pathway, is to take this and instantly try to do something new and create that new pathway in your brain so it becomes more of a habit. So all of our training today is built on this model. Everything we do here at 304 is built on it. All right, so you may be saying, what's the difference between competencies and a skill? Like, aren't they kind of the same thing? Not necessarily. So a skill is something you actually can do, something you can say, here's how you do this. Step 1, step 2, like it's something you actually can physically do, and that's a skill. And then a competency is more of a theory or a way of being that's applied over multiple skills. And that's the difference between a skill and a competency. And you have to have both of those to actually start to think about development. So let's look at the competencies that we're focusing on today. And these are all listed out in your workbook with a full definition. And so you may think, wow, we're going to focus on having a futuristic lens. This is all about me. So really, maybe this is probably about leading self. And yes, it is. But here's the other thing. The things you're going to learn today are going to help you lead change. They're going to help you deliver on strategies. They're going to help you lead from a distance and help people empower and foster innovation and collaboration. And so though we're kind of focused on you today, what this does is it allows you to do so much more. And that's why competencies and understanding competencies is so important, because as we're learning and expanding our mind map, which we'll talk about some more today, you have to understand what you're actually gaining, because you're just gaining so much more than this actual skill that we're looking at today. All right, and so the skills you will learn today is you're going to understand the power of having a growth mindset. And that word and phrase is thrown around all the time, right? And what does that actually mean and why is that important? And we're going to talk about that. How our brain uses fear to hold us back and keep us safe. And fear is a funny little chemical. We're going to talk about that funny little chemical, but it is disguised by all kinds of things. And we're going to learn and understand that today, because I think once you start to understand fear, you'll start to understand how you can open up and grow in a new way. And those of you on the call, which there are several, I've seen you guys piping in that have worked with me, know that I talk about fear all of the time. And when you learn to manage that fear, oh my gosh, the world just opens up for you in a whole new way. We're also going to talk about 6 steps you can take to actually create growth and expand your mind map. And again, how do you apply those and start thinking about how to use those with yourself and with your team? So, all right. Are you guys ready to get started? Yeah, let's start on the actual good stuff, right? I love this graphic. I know that that's kind of random, but I just think this is a beautiful picture. So, all right, so let's do it. Absolutely. So, all right. So what is a growth mindset? So it's a sense of being, it's a way of thinking about the world around you. And it's really hard to have a growth mindset. You have to actually think a lot about it. And it's important for us to know what is not a growth mindset, what one might call a fixed mindset, because you have to understand the differences so that you recognize when you are being fixed and not willing to grow, so that you can go, oh, hey, wait a minute, I got to grow. I have to deploy some of these things I've learned to really open up and expand my mind map today. And so a fixed mind map can look like, oh gosh, it can look like roadblocks. It can, focusing on what's going to go wrong, not really looking for opportunities to grow because that could be a little scary. People with fixed mindsets, they often avoid feedback or advice because, again, they want to stay where they are. And often they give up easily. And at any time, all of us on this call today have done one of these. So when you look at this fixed mindset list, which one are you, probably in the habit of? Because we all have one that's a habit. I have to sometimes really look at what might go, like I think about what could go wrong, and I have to flip that, which we're going to talk about a tool to do that today. A fixed mindset sounds like being in a comfort zone. You're absolutely right. It's super comfortable and it feels warm and fuzzy and it feels very safe. And there's a reason why it feels that way and why our brain wants to keep us there. But let's talk about where we want to live and where the possibilities are. And when you signed up for this, you wanted to hear about innovation. This whole entire series is about innovation. And the only way to innovate is to focus on a growth mindset. And to do that, you have to see challenges as just problems that need to be solved. You have to be actively looking for opportunities to learn. Like today, you actively showed up today. You have to stay focused on continuous learning. You have to seek out feedback and information, and then persist when you see setbacks, and especially persist when others are seeing setbacks, because then you can forge a path for yourself and for them. And find some joy in other people's success. Nothing makes me happier than seeing people successful. It gives me so much energy. It lets me know what's possible. And so when you look at this list, which one of these would be important for you to work on? If you had one of these that you might be at 50%, but you could take to 70%, would really make a difference for you. So drop in the chat box which one would make a difference for you. For me, again, it's like making sure things go right. As often a vendor, we don't want to mess up, right? We have to be perfect. We want to deliver to our clients. And so again, it's one of those things I'm constantly working on. All right, so let's talk about, Deborah, feedback and information. Cheryl, looking for opportunities to make sure things go right. Yeah, awesome. And Jessica's on here. Lisa, so many good ideas coming in. And Amber, definitely looking for things to go right. All right, so here is something I want you guys to all know. Your mind is your map. It's a map of your life, the map of your experiences. And your mind holds all of those experiences, and it's what it knows. Your brain doesn't know anything outside of what it has experienced, what it's felt, what it's smelled, what it's seen. Like, it has to constantly look at only what it knows. We're not like computers where you just like download something into it and it gets to have experiences or knowledge that it never knew. So your mind is always your map of your experiences. And that's important to know, because to have a growth mindset, we have to get really comfortable with expanding our mind maps and actively expanding them. Because if left to its own devices, the brain will not expand its mind map. The brain loves to be comfortable. And honestly, the brain's a little lazy because it's saving energy, right, to keep us alive. But when you start to grow, especially when we talk about some of the things you can do today to grow and expand your mind map, it's really uncomfortable, like really uncomfortable, right? Like, we're going to talk about the emotions that come up. And it's important to know that it's okay to be uncomfortable. And why is that? And I love to use the analogy of a video game, right? So, we probably have all played some sort of video game in our life, maybe some more than others. But you know how in a video game, you get to a certain level and you are like the jam, like you can play that level and you are just like, and you know where everything's at. You're almost like you're not thinking. Your brain is just going at it at that level. And what is actually happening is your brain has created neural pathways to make sure that the fastest way that you know how to do it, right? And so on that level, you are just going as fast as you can. And because you're so amazing at that level, you level up. And as soon as you level up, you're like, all of a sudden you're like, oh, like I just died. Like someone just, shot me with my, the arrow or something, or whatever game you're playing, or everything you knew, like where it was is now moved. And it's because your mind map expanded, right? That you were on level 6, maybe, and then you went to level 7. And all of that new space is new to your mind and it's uncomfortable and it doesn't feel quite right. So has anyone ever had that moment where you felt like your mind opened up to new possibilities and you were like, eek, like it doesn't feel right? And what did you want to do? I'm sure you probably wanted to, level back down. In a video game, you can't really level back down. Maybe you can, I don't know. I'm not very good at it. But in life, we oftentimes level up, we get scared and we level back down. And that's not good. We got to keep leveling up. So last year, oh my gosh, last year was all about leveling up. It was all about expanding our mind maps. That is definitely what we did all day, every day last year. So what happens when our mind expands and we get really uncomfortable in this little gray space that we don't know very well? Fear kicks in. And the reason why fear kicks in is it's your brain's tool to keep you alive. The funny thing about it is your brain doesn't understand the difference between, getting in trouble at work or looking bad at work and falling off a cliff. It's just fear. It's just something's going to go bad, right? And so your brain doesn't always know how to respond. And so you might think, well, gosh, when I level up, I'm not in fear. You probably are. It's still the fear chemical. But how it starts to show up in your brain when you give it feelings and when you give it language, it shows up as, this is too hard. I'll be judged. I'll fail. I'll be too embarrassed. This won't work, right? And so then what do? When our brain starts to tell us these lies, because that's what they are, it's not true, it's just fear, our brain starts to contract back down into its comfortable spot. And so we have to make sure that we get really uncomfortable or comfortable with this uncomfortable feeling of fear. The other thing I want you to know about fear is it's only a chemical reaction. That is it. And, if you like walk up to like a cliff, like just looking at this girl in this picture sitting on the cliff, it makes my belly flip flop. I'm like, oh, right. That's my body saying, back away from that cliff. If you fall off, you're going to get hurt. So don't do it. And so again, as soon as you get to a place where you feel like your coworkers may judge you or your boss might not be happy with you, or, you're not sure if you can figure this out, your body starts to produce those chemicals to get you to back away from it. But if you can get comfortable with those chemicals and you can say, hey, fear is just a chemical reaction. This is just my body doing what my body does. I know where I want to go and I know where I want to, what I want to do. Your life will change in a whole new way. And that's what we're going to work on today. Does anyone recognize that fear feeling when things start to like come up at you and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do it, right? And our brain starts to tell us some really crazy stuff. So Olympia, I'm so glad you like it. Yeah, it's really fascinating when you start to understand how the brain actually works so that you can work with it and not against it. But so often we don't know. I didn't know for years. My mind map was blown away when I started learning about the brain and how it impacts my leadership skills. So yeah, so good. Oh, Joelle, it's so good to see you. All right, so that's all a fun story, right? And yay, we learned about the brain. Now, again, what are we going to do with it? Because we're here to create behavior changes. So I'm going to give you today 6 things that you can do to help expand your mind map and also help you get really comfortable in expansion. Because the more you do it, the more natural it will feel. Again, it's those neural pathways, and a neural pathway is the fastest point from A to B in your brain at the simplest form. And so if staying safe has always been your fastest way through that path, you're going to have to work to create a new path. You're going to have to think about it. You're going to have to work at it. But over time, if you keep working at it, it will become the most comfortable path. And developing yourself and expanding your mind map will actually become just second nature to you. And that old neural pathway will start to close down. It'll always be there, especially if you're tired or if you've had a bad day. Your old neural pathway will kind of rear its head, but we're going to stay really focused on creating a new one with these 6 things we can do about that. All right, some of you are just jumping on. If you're just jumping on, hello, welcome. We're excited to have you. All right, so the first thing you can do to help you expand your mind map and help you think about getting really comfortable with it. Oh, hi, Senior. So good to see you. Senior and I spent a lot of time over last year. We worked together, and so good to have you here. All right, so embrace perfections. Hey, Senior, this one's for you. Embrace imperfections. We have to embrace imperfections in ourselves and in others. It's what makes people unique. Here's what's interesting about judgment, because when we're not embracing uniqueness in others, we're actually judging others, right? And we all do it. Every single one of us on this call do this every day. Well, someone will walk by and we're like, that's kind of weird. I wonder why they did that. Wonder why they said that. That's strange. So we're constantly evaluating what's different to our brain. And what's interesting about that is judgment's a muscle. The more we use it, the better it gets. We don't want judgment to become a muscle that we're good at using, because if we're judging others, we start judging ourselves. And if we're in constant state of judgment in ourselves, then we can't get brave. We can't be innovative. We can't go out and stand on the cliff and be okay with that fear feeling, because we've gotten too used to judgment. And so every time you go out and make a judgment, know that you're working that muscle and you don't want to do it. And so when someone does something that's a little quirky, now, obviously, we know we're all leaders here. We got to hold people accountable. This isn't about that. This is about just something that seems different to us, or someone who's trying to learn something new and they're struggling, but we know they're going to get it, right? How do we just let them figure it out? And how do we not judge so that we don't work that muscle out? Because again, we don't want to. And so what I want you to do, the first of the 6 things to help you stay in growth mindset, is see the beauty in imperfections and not the judgment. It's not easy. I get it. But if you really work at not working the muscle of judgment and working the muscle of imperfections, I think you'll be surprised how you really open up to new thoughts and new ideas. All right, so if you know that you've got to downgrade your judgment muscle, upgrade your imperfection and enjoying imperfection muscle, give me a yes in the chat box. Let me know if this is something you may want to work on. All right. Oh, lots of yeses. Fantastic. Absolutely. Great. All right, so here's number 2. This is never become a master. And as humans, we like to become the master at things because there's a lot of safety in perfectionism. And becoming a master is becoming perfect, right? And when you're perfect, you can't fail. You can't be judged. Things can't go wrong for you. It feels really good to imagine a life where nothing ever went wrong for you. But when you become a master at something, or you view yourself as a master at something, what you've done is put hard rails on your mind map and said, I have nothing left to learn. Being a master means you're standing at the finish line. This isn't good for your mind because it keeps you from learning and expanding, but it's also really damaging to your team, because what will happen is your team will see you as someone who expects perfectionism, has nothing left to learn. You'll carry yourself in a different way, and you'll create a culture, an unconscious culture of Don't show your imperfections. Don't let anyone know you need to learn something new, because the boss is a master, and he or she will be upset if you're not a master too. So again, we're talking about you today, but it impacts your entire team. That's why we looked at all those competencies. And so every time you think you want to be a master at something, I challenge you to say, no matter how good I get, I can get better. No matter how much I know, I can know more. And know that everyone around you who is also at a high level, or thinks they're a master, make sure you know that they have some stuff that they have to learn too. So, all right, so your second tip is never become a master, always be in growth. All right, so here's one of my very favorite ones: get curious. To expand your mind map, you have to ask questions that you don't know the answer to. That, my friends, is very hard, especially as a leader. How many times have we seen something go wrong and we're like, all right, I gotta, be a good boss, and I'm not going to point out they messed up. I'm just going to say, hey, tell me what happened here. And right? Like you in your mind really kind of know what happened. But when you're not really hearing what that other person has to say. They may tell you something you had no idea existed. But if you weren't getting curious and not willing to ask questions you don't know the answer to, again, you can't expand your mind map because you're not willing to learn new things. And so you've got to be able to get curious and really start to ask questions you don't know the answer to. And in this workbook, I gave you a long list of questions you can use with your team. There are discovery questions. And here's an example of some of those. Like, just imagine if you were having a day where, it was just tough. The team wasn't necessarily doing well. Maybe that people aren't getting along. Like, it's just not what it needs to be. And you asked yourself, what assumptions do I have right now about my team? And are those assumptions actually true? And you started really working through that. What could you learn? How would that change your mind map? How would that allow you to grow? What about, saying, what's my experience with this, and how can I grow my experience with this? One of my favorite questions: what led me to this idea? What led you to this idea may not be giving you purpose. If you have a situation where you need to get curious, knowing how you got there may help you backtrack a little bit, and help you think about things in a new way. And the questions on page 10, and Susan, I'm so glad you love page 10. I love all these questions. They're so good. It'll help you start to think about discovery with you and your team, and also innovation. And again, when you ask these questions, it's so hard, but you can't know the answer to it because we're really just making assumptions. And so one of my favorite questions on here is actually about assumptions. What if our assumptions weren't true? So imagine you've got a big problem, and your team and you are trying to solve it, and everyone's just like, right, racking their brains. We can't figure this out. And what if you just asked everyone to stop, take a breath, and said to them, what if everything we're thinking right now, everything we're assuming about this problem, what if none of it was true? What would be true? Imagine that kind of question to your team, getting them, again, to move off where they are to go into a new pathway. It'll be amazing to see how they start to change their views, or how they start to see things a little differently. All right, how many of you see these questions and know there may be one or two that you want to ask your team this week? Because again, to change behaviors, we have to start changing our behaviors right away after we learn this material. All right, so being curious lets you learn things you didn't even know you needed to learn. Wow, right? And I mentioned this a little earlier, going through this neuroscience leadership training, and becoming certified in it. Like, every day I went to class, and for a year and a half I went to class for a year and a half to study this. And I'd be like, God, if I'd only known that back when I was doing whatever, I could have done this and that, right? So it totally blew out my mind map. Like my mind map exploded that year and a half. But I learned things I didn't know I needed to know because I thought I was pretty decent at it. I mean, heck, I decided to open a leadership development company. I guess I thought I was good at it, but then I learned things I didn't even know I needed to learn. And it blew it out of the water and really changed how I approach every single one of my clients and really approach myself and our team. This team knows I say all the time, change my mind, help me see it different. And oftentimes they all do that. So good. All right. So who wants to get curious with their team and curious with themselves? All right. So, oh, Robin, these are great and many to ask. Good. Oh, thanks for the thumbs up, Katie. And Katie, also, I don't know if you saw, you got our gold star of the day. You were our first one to jump on this morning. So gold stars to you. So, all right. So the next one I want you to think about is managing your thoughts. And this is an interesting one. So again, fear creates all these chemicals to keep you safe. So it also has to tell you a story to keep you safe, right? So when you go and you expand how you're thinking and you're expanding what you're doing and you're like, it doesn't feel good, right? And so something doesn't feel quite right. Your brain starts to tell you some actual lies because again, it wants to keep you safe in the cave. It will say things like, girl, you can't do that. People are going to judge you. Or are you sure that's going to work? Or that's too hard. Don't even try it. What happens if you mess up? Your brain will start to tell you all of these things to keep you safe. Again, our brains are actually pretty lazy. They really don't want you going out and growing because that means the brain's got to work pretty hard on that. So when you start to, feel those things and those thoughts come up, what I want you to do as soon as those thoughts that hold you back come up, I want you to think about, how do I flip it? I can't do this. You could say, actually, I can't do it today. And that's actually true. But what I can do is practice. What I can do is get better, because that's also true. I don't like challenges. I'm not very good at change. I don't really like challenges. I like status quo. There's people that I coach all the time that tell me that. And I'm like, what else could be true? What else could be true is challenges make you better. And so it's really about taking those fear statements that your brain creates, because that's what it does to keep you alive, and to flip that into a new growth statement. And the one thing that's important to know about that is your brain believes what you tell it. You would think that your brain's telling you something, but no, you're telling your brain. Your brain believes what you tell it. So if you tell your brain that you're not good enough, that you're in trouble, or you're not smart enough, or you can't do that, or no one's going to love you, or any of that stuff you tell your brain, every time you tell your brain, it actually believes you. So it's so important to manage our thoughts, because we want our brain to believe good stuff. Your brain makes up stories. So don't let it make up a story that holds you back. If you don't know the truth, you might as well make up a good story, right? I had a friend once who always said, why know the truth when you can speculate? I always thought that was so funny when she would say that, because she loved to speculate about what people were doing or saying, or why, or their motives behind it. And then she would believe all these stories she made up in her head that were not true. And so be very, very careful what you tell your brain, because it will believe what you tell it. Even to something as simple as, if someone says, how's your day going? And you're like, oh, I'm drowning. Like, I just can't keep my head above water this week. Your brain actually goes, oh, we're drowning. And it will actually release chemicals that will help you try to save your life. Your brain truly does believe what you tell it. So you've got to tell it things that serve you. If you're going to make it up in your head, make up good stuff. All right, so we're coming down. I think this might be the fifth one. Ask yourself what could go right. So I know you've done it. I do it. You have like maybe a project, or you're going to embark on something new, and you're like, all right, what could go wrong here? Because I'm going to make sure it doesn't go wrong. So again, now what you've released is fear chemicals. Uh-oh, what could go wrong? And if you're doing that exercise with your team, guess what? You just produce fear chemicals in everyone in your team. It's really hard to innovate. It's actually impossible to innovate when you're in fear because you're so locked down in protection. And so when you say things like, all right, we've got this huge project, like let's take this leading edge, right? The entire team and I have been working for 2-3 months on leading edge. I could have talked a lot about what could go wrong because, technology, no one signs up, people don't like the workshops, right? Like all that stuff I could have told myself. But what I told myself is what could go right. What could go right is we all got on today and were able to without a problem, which happened, right? None of you that I'm aware of had any problem. You clicked and boom, here you are. What could go right is I hope that you guys love these workshops and you grow from these workshops. But when you focus on what could go right, your brain starts to innovate because it's not setting in fear chemicals about what could go wrong. And so then you can think even bigger and better and what could go right, what is possible. Then you and your team figure out how to make what could go right or what is possible. You figure out how to do that. You don't figure out how to protect yourself from things going wrong. You figure out how to make the impossible possible. And that happens by just such a small shift in your language. Instead of saying what could go wrong here, always say what could go right and work towards that. All right, so Chelsea, yes, easy to fall. Yeah, and stay in your comfort zone. How many people definitely want to start thinking about what could go right in their life and know that that would make a big difference? Senior, what could go right? I have to try that. Yes, try that for sure. Oh, Sherry, so good to see you. Susan, hello. Oh my gosh, Sherry that's on here. I have known Sherry. Sherry and I have known each other. I don't even know how many years, probably 15 now. Oh my gosh, crazy, right? A million. Yes, a million. We look great for our age. We've known each other for a million. All right. So good to see some of you on here. Oh, hi, Brooke. My neighbor's on here, Brooke. So very good. All right. So what I want you to do, what do you do with this, right? Because again, we got to do something with what we're learning today. What I want you to do is next time you've got a project or have something going on, or just really you wake up in the morning, ask yourself what could go right, and then figure out how to make that reality true for you and true for your team, because that will allow you to do big things. And what an amazing gift. What if you do that so often that your entire team starts to think about that? And every time your team goes into fear, they're like, gosh, what could go right? Imagine a team of 50 people thinking that. That is powerful. That can change lives. It can change businesses. So good. All right. So here's the very last one. And those of you that are on here that have worked with me, because a lot of you are, you know that this is my favorite question to ask all my coaching clients. What else could be true? What else could be true? Here's why I ask that. Leslie, I've heard this a time or two. Yeah. So the reason I ask this question is our brain, again, we've gone through this. It creates fear. It makes up lies. It keeps you safe. As soon as you expand your mind, it wants you to crumble back down into where you've been. It tells you all of these stories. And so often when a client gets on and starts telling me these stories, right? Like this happened today and my boss and my team or whatever, I don't know. I always say, well, what else could be true? What else could be true is, you know what? So-and-so didn't deliver today because, their son was really sick last night and 98% of the time they knock it out of the park. What else could be true is I can give that they just had a bad day and tomorrow they're going to be awesome. That could also be true. Someone may say something like, my boss isn't really paying much attention to me. They haven't returned my last 10 emails. I think they're mad at me. Okay. What else could be true? Well, actually, there's a board meeting this week and, my boss looks really stressed out. Okay. What else could be true is that they just haven't gotten back to you because they're dealing with something else. Oh, okay. So you can see about looking at what else could be true, takes away those fear chemicals and allows you to open up to new ideas. That makes an amazing way to just think about life, right? Especially a spouse, right? If your spouse is annoying you and, they're doing something and you're like, well, what else could be true is they're having a bad day too. And you know what? I've had them They've had them. We can both have them today. You know, all of that can be. So Lou, challenging assumptions. Yes. So we have a question coming in from Sue. How do you feel about visualizing what could go wrong after thinking about what could go right? I would challenge you to visualize it all going right. Now, part of it all going right is nothing went wrong, right? Or correct, I guess. We're using the word right a lot. So what I would challenge you to do is visualize it all going right and everything that has to happen for it to go right. Because as soon as you go, what could go wrong? Oh, I'll fix it. Instead of what could go right, I need to fix that same thing. It's the same work that needs to be done. There's no difference in the work. It's just how we're thinking about it and how our chemicals in our brain are being released so that we can stay in innovation. So I'm going to challenge you to constantly be thinking, what could go right? How do I make it go right? And that will help you. So yeah. So I hope that helped you out. Brooke, wow, mind map blown. Good. All right. If you've expanded your mind map today, just even a tiny bit, in the chat box, say, I expanded, my boundaries are bigger, I leveled up, whatever you feel like you've done so far today, throw it in the chat box and let me know. Expanded, leveled up, leveling up, fantastic, expanded for sure. Look at all of you guys. Yay, everyone's leveling up. Isn't it fun as a group? You know, there's over 100 people on this call right now. And for over 100 people today, collectively, we've been on here hanging out together for, I don't know, about 45 minutes. And in 45 minutes, over 100 people in this little community have leveled up and expanded their mind map. That's fantastic. Super cool. Blows my mind and expands my map. All right. Oh, Connie Youngblood, so good to see you. Glad to have you here today. All right. So again, we have to do something with this information. Oh, here you go. Your brain creates a story. Always think about what could go right. All of those good things. Always turn those stories around from a place of fear to a place of innovation. All right. So we talked about 6 things today, and there could be a ton of them. You probably have your own to help you expand your mind map. But here's some of the ones I brought you today. And again, we're going to embrace perfections, because when we get stuck in judgment and we use that muscle, it's hard to get out of it, and it does no purpose for us, our relationships, or others. Never become a master. Never be perfect. Always know that you have something to learn. It helps you use that muscle of seeing imperfections in others, and it allows you to accept yourself, and it allows you to continue to grow. Get curious. And getting curious is about asking questions you don't know the answer to and not making assumptions. Even if you think you know, you have to be open to something else. Because if you're not open to hearing the truth from your team, if you're not open to getting curious with your team, then you're not open to growing your business. One of the most important things we can do as leaders is get curious and create an environment where people can tell us the truth, because we can do something with the truth. When people don't tell you the truth about the business and they know the truth, that's never good. The only reason they don't tell us the truth is because we've created an environment where they can't, where it's not comfortable, where truth telling creates fear. But if you're a curious leader, you allow people to tell you what's truly on their mind, and you're okay with the imperfections of it. You're okay with it because you're not a master. Then the team starts truth telling, and it's amazing. You have to manage your thoughts. Every single time you get some crazy thought in your head, because you're going to get them all day long. It's how your brain is hardwired, that tells you you're not good enough, or you're not going to do well on this next interview, or no one's going to ever hire you again, or you're never going to figure out this new project. Flip it on its head, because every time you think that, fear chemicals are going off and innovation is shutting down. You've got to manage your thoughts to manage innovation. And again, ask what could go right, and always ask what else could be true. Those are so powerful to ask yourself and for your team. All right, out of these 6, give me a number, which one you want to work on first, because part of changing behaviors is changing immediately today. When we hang up, you're going to do one of these. So we have some 1s, 6s, 5s, lots of 5s, lots of 1s, embrace 4s, a 3 and a 5. Oh, good. Here's what I love about it. All of you are unique to you. So all of you have chosen what's unique to work on, what's important to you and what could be important to your team. So good, 6s, 5s, a 4 and a 6. So all kinds of numbers coming in. Fantastic. All right, so we're going to come back to where we started, and that's the behavior change model. We have gone through leadership development around skills and around competencies. We've done that, right? You've learned some skills. You've learned how to say something different or think different, and that's going to impact your ability to lead others and lead yourself. But to create behavior change, there's 2 more things that you have to do, and we've set it up for you in the workbook so that you can do it. The next thing you've got to do is self-coaching questions. Now, if you have a coach, you can work on the questions with your coach. If you have a buddy that's taking this course with you, we have a lot of companies who have invited their teams that are here. Find a buddy and work on these questions together, or work on these questions on your own, like maybe tonight or tomorrow morning early. You can stop and think about, how do I look at these questions and start to ask them? And so they're on page 12. Every workshop will get these questions, but this one is on page 12. These questions are important, and they're specifically designed to help you think about building a new neural pathway. All of the things we looked at and the numbers that you gave me, the ones you wanted to work on, whether that was number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, to do that, you have to create a new neural pathway. And to do it, the work has to be worth it. And that's what coaching provides you. It provides you reason on why you want to work on it. And so make sure that sometime in the next 24 hours, while this is still fresh and your chemicals of learning are still in your brain, take advantage of those chemicals and do these questions and sit down and do a little journaling around them. And that will start to allow you to, again, start to create a behavior change. You know some skills, you've developed some competencies, you're doing the mental work through self-coaching. And last but not least, you have to do something. You have to physically go and use this. And the faster you do it, the more likely you're going to create change. And so when we get off this call today, commit to yourself that within 20 to 30 minutes, because fear pops up all day long, this is pretty easy to use pretty fast. Make sure that you go and think of these 6 things. Keep this workbook where you can see it and remember to go back at it. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is take one of the 6, and you already gave me the number, the one you want to work on, and practice it for at least a week. And I mean, practice it, focus on it, because what's important is that you start creating that new neural pathway. Right now, you're like, this is cool. Like, maybe it's fun. Yeah, I should do that. It will not happen if you don't create a new neural pathway. So you have to practice and practice during the next week on at least one of these. The other thing I want you to do is, when you feel yourself getting stuck, stop feeling stuck. Or when you feel yourself, kind of wanting to expand, I mean, you can almost feel it in your body, right? Like all of a sudden your mind map pops up and you're like, oh, and you're like, oh, right? Like we do that. Like we physically expand out and expand in. And so what I want you guys to do, when you feel yourself expanding your mind map and expanding out, but then you instantly go like this because of fear, I want you to take a breath, and I want you to grab your workbook, look at those 6 things and say, which one of these do I need to do? I've got to work through this. I have all the power in my body to expand and get really comfortable in this new mind map and expand it again. All right. The third thing I want you to do is I want you to share what you've learned today with someone else in the next 24 hours. If you share what you've learned, and we all do this, right? You read an article and you're like, hey, I read an article today. And you tell someone, right? I want you to do the same thing, because what that does is it actually helps you start to retain that information. It becomes yours when you share it back out. Right now, it's not yours. I'm pushing education into you and you're pulling it in. What I need you to do is push it back out, because then it becomes yours. And so at the end of today, or at least by, tomorrow afternoon, make sure you've said to someone, hey, I took this class. Let me tell you one thing I learned, because that will help you start to own it. And again, create behavior change. And then last but never least, always complete your self-coaching questions. They make a huge difference. All right, so Olympia, I can do that. I love the little arm emoji. Very good. A question from Lou. Is it harder to rewire your brain as you get older? Ooh, good question. So we've all been told you can't teach new or old dogs new tricks. That's not true. What we know about the brain today, and what we know about the brain today, we actually have only known for probably the last 20 years. Brain science is really slow to catch up because it's hard to study your brain because it's not like a heart or a liver. You can take it out, look at it, put it back in. Can't do that with your brain, by the way. Can't take it out and look at it and put it back in and let it work. So we had to let science catch up with the ability to monitor the brain while it's in activity. Not an easy thing to do. So what we know in today's world, neuroplasticity, which is the ability to rewire and learn new things, new habits, new ways of thinking. What we know today is you can do that every day and year, no matter how young or how old you are. Now, the older you are and the more you've traveled a path, the deeper it is, the harder it is to create a new path, but it can be done. And, you know, when we're tired or stressed, those old paths pop back up because they're really familiar to our brain and they like them. You know, our brain doesn't like to change, but you can, and you have to work at it, but you can definitely, no matter how old or young, change your neural pathways, change your habits, and change your way of thinking. All right, good. All right, let's start on new paths today. That's right, Chelsea, very good. All right, so I know there's been some questions coming in that I've probably missed, and we're gonna get to the questions, but I know some of you are on tight schedules. These are 90-minute workshops. But we spend the last piece of it doing Q&A. If you're on here and you want your SHRM credits, because we were able to get SHRM credits for all 3 of these, at the end of the session, we will drop the link to pick up your certificate with your number so that you can count this class towards your SHRM recertification. So go SHRM for allowing us to do that. So I hope you guys had a great time today. Again, we're going to stay on for questions. But don't forget, our second workshop is Friday. I do 3 workshops because that's how all of our training's built, because adults like to learn a little, go do something with it, learn something, and go do something with it. If I gave it to you all in one day, you'd probably do nothing with it. So it's important that you come back on Friday, same place, same bat channel. And what we're going to talk about on Friday is influential conversations. And in today's world, we can't be directive. We have to be influential. And we're going to give you some tools on how to do that. So that comes up. So yeah, so we've come to the point where you can stay on for questions or you can jump off. If you're jumping off, I want to say thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this and you want to tell a friend, you can send your friend the link to sign up. They'll get all the replays. They'll get the workbook. They can come to the other 2 sessions. What's important to know is here at 304, we do talent strategies, we do assessments, leadership academies, executive coaching, anything around talent strategies. We do that and we have a ton of fun around it. All right, so now we come to questions. All right, so lots of things coming in. Oh, you guys are amazing. Like, you guys give me so much energy. Like, in 2020 was a tough year. Have you heard that yet? Anyhow, Leading Edge was a shining star for me and the whole team. It really changed our outlook on the year. And it really helped us just, really expand our mind map to what is possible. So this is truly a gift for me to be able to give this to you guys. Like, I love doing this. Clarissa, one of the best trainings I've had in a long time. Oh, fantastic. Good. Value is important to me. I want to make it, no one has any extra time in their day, right? So we have to make sure this is valuable. Oh, the Pear team is here. Hey, Pears, Tracy and everyone on the team. So glad to have you. Anyhow, so good. All right. So now we're here for Q&A. So shoot me over a question in the chat box and I will answer your questions. Trying to think what questions come up for this workshop typically, because it'll take a little bit of time for you guys to type in your questions. So one of the things that comes up is, how do I get the fear chemical to just stop? Like, why do I have to battle it? Can it just stop? And no, it can't stop. It's the way we stay alive as humans. Amy, you Xanax. Oh, well, yeah, that does reduce the fear chemical. Absolutely. But what's interesting about it, it's the only way we stay alive. And we have to stay alive. It's how our brain helps us. But again, our brain doesn't really understand getting in trouble by our boss and a snake on our leg. The fear chemical is the same. It's what we do with that fear chemical that creates our emotions and our feelings and our thoughts. So good. Sherry's question, how can I navigate with leaders higher level than me who aren't quite ready to embrace a growth mindset? Ooh, good question, Sherry. So try some of these, exercises on them, but be a little stealth about it. So you could say someone comes in and they're just, they're not willing to listen. They have made all these assumptions about something. You could, say, hey, I see that too, but are you open to seeing what else could be the problem here? Because I think we could solve it if we looked at one more thing. And the boss may go, oh, okay, I can look at one more thing. But if you just say, no, you're wrong, then they're probably not going to listen to you. And I know you well enough to know you would never do that. But I always like to say, hey, I hear all of that and I don't disagree with it, but I would love for you to be open to one more idea of what could be going wrong here. And people usually are up for that. All right, so Leslie, how do move others into growth when they are stuck? Oh, good question. Well, the first thing you can do is use some of this training, right? Kind of talk to them, say, hey, I learned something today and I just thought it was cool and I wanted to share it with you. And then maybe invite them into practicing with you. And so say you're going to do about what could go right. Say that's the one you want to practice. This person may need that, you might think. And you could say, I took this workshop, I learned this, and I wanted our team to practice it. So what I wanted to do is every time I call you, I want you to challenge me on what could go right. And would it be okay if you were my study buddy and I challenged you on it? And so what you're doing again is you're setting up opportunity for collaborative growth. And you're saying it's okay to grow. I'm growing as your leader and I need you to grow. I think one of the best things that people can do as leaders is make learning cool. And you make learning cool by saying, hey, I learned something new today, or I'm taking this workshop. Why don't you take it with me? Or, just talking about your own personal growth tells your team unconsciously, we're all growing together and it's okay. And when it's okay to grow together, they will continue to grow with you. They won't be nervous or scared about it. All right, Grace, good to see you. What areas of the growth mindset are most useful when integrating into a new role? Ooh, good question, Grace, because I know you are in a new role. Oh gosh, I think it depends on what's important to you. I think it's when you look at them, I would definitely say what else could be true, because when you're kind of in a place where you're learning a new team, a new position, you're learning a new boss, like there's a lot, right? So your brain's going to play tricks on you. Someone may say something, you're like, oh, they were really short with me. I hope I didn't make them mad, or I hope I didn't get that wrong. What else could be true? What else could be true is they've got 500 emails today and they just gave me a short answer. Oh, okay. And then you can see how instantly your brain goes to continuing to work versus down the spiral of fear. So that one might be good for you, Grace, but honestly, I think all of them would be fantastic. Dana, great questions and responses. Makes learning cool. Yeah, totally make learning cool on your team. Let people know that you're not a master, and it's amazing how everyone around you starts to grow too. Joelle, how to recognize that you are thinking with fear to get out of it. So any thought you have that just makes you feel, ugh, any thought you have that isn't positive, that's a fear thought. And so just recognize that as a human, you're going to have more thoughts around fear during the day than thoughts without it, because that's just how we're working. That's just how we're hardwired. So know that chances are it may be a fear thought for every thought that you have. And so just constantly, especially for you, Joelle, because we know each other, I would love for you to work on, that flip, right? Like if I think this, I can flip it and think that, like change your thoughts. Like if you could practice that for a week, and I know how stressful your job is, you have a super high stressful job, that might help you. I think that would be a really good one. Grace, good points. Definitely experienced that. Yeah, right. Because our brains are just us. Everything's new. All right, going through a question from Tony. How would you recommend using these tools with imposter syndrome? Oh, imposter syndrome. So I think imposter syndrome is probably a combination of everything we talked about today and probably a whole lot more. But at its root, all it is fear. It's fear we won't do it right. It's fear that other people will figure out we don't know what we're doing. It's fear that we may fail. At the end of the day, all it is a fear. All it is a chemical. Any of this, it's just a chemical reaction that produces your thoughts that then trigger what we have come to call imposter syndrome. And it's very common because, again, we're fear-based animals. And so what I would say with that is, what else could be true? If you're feeling like the imposter or someone might figure you out, what else could be true? What else could be true is that you knock it out of the park and you're really good at it. What else could be true is you're maybe not great at it the first time, but you're going to get better the more and more you practice it. What else could be true is that you have knowledge that you've been hired for that no one else on the team has. How do you share that? So really focusing on what else could be true with imposter syndrome, I think helps. All right, so Anne-Marie, what if you do the work creating an environment about truth, but your bosses don't want to hear the truth and will not have an open mindset? How do you not let it bother you? Oh, that's a tough one, but it's the reality. So it's funny, the example I always use around truth telling in the workplace is Kodak. So some of you on this line might be too young to know how big Kodak was back in the day, but back in the day, Kodak was everything, right? If you wanted a picture made, Kodak printed it. They had these little tiny huts and parking lots. You dropped off your film, you picked up your pictures later. Kodak actually had the first digital camera in 1977. And the guy, Steve Sasso, I think, who invented it, like you can go and find interviews with him, which is always interesting. But he talks about being really excited about this. And he tells, the bosses, look at this new thing I created. And the bosses were like, yeah, no, that's silly. No one's going to want to see their pictures on their TV because that's how it was set up. And they weren't willing to hear the truth. They weren't willing to hear the truth about how this person saw that the world was changing. Now, I'm glad in 1977, they didn't catch on to the digital camera because that meant my college years were not documented, which is a good thing. But Kodak is basically no more because someone else, also invented the digital camera, actually had to pay them royalty and patent rights until 2012 when Kodak filed bankruptcy because they no longer got their patent royalties from like Apple and all those places. So what I would say with your bosses is they've got to know the truth, because you can crash a company if you're not willing to hear the truth. And so when your bosses aren't willing to hear the truth, you may say something like, I see that you have a strong viewpoint on this, and I see your viewpoint. But I also think it's important that we look at something else just in case it can make the smallest of differences. And they're going to like, maybe, okay. Or you could say like, hey, product, whatever is down 10%. I know everyone's frustrated about it. I've been doing some research. I've been digging it, and I have some ideas. They're a little unconventional. They're probably not the ideas you want to hear, but I think if we put them on the table, there might be something there. Are you willing to hear them? So you kind of get them curious, right? You get them curious to what information you have so that they want to take it. If you just force it on them, chances are they won't, but you got to get them curious. So get them curious. So I hope that helps. All right. So thank you, Chelsea. For those of you I'm not connected with on LinkedIn, Chelsea just dropped my LinkedIn page. Just send me a connection request. We do all kinds of training. Would love to have you there. All right. So Anne-Marie, oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad that was a good tip and it worked for you. Hopefully it worked for others too. All right, what other questions do you guys have? So many good questions coming in. Sounds like being patient through the time, getting curious. Oh yeah, always get curious and help others get curious. Like, you know, sometimes it's okay to have a little secret that someone else might want to know. So, all right, going through, if you have another question, put it in so that we can get all the questions out there. And we will record this session for those who jumped on late or early and had to leave early, or just want to watch it again or share it with someone. Tonight, you'll receive an email with the replay, but it'll take a few hours for it all to download and come to you. So good. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions come through. Chelsea and Jen, anything I missed that you saw in the chat box that I need to address? All right. Let's see. All right. Looks like we covered them all. All right. Well, you guys were amazing. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, taking time and sharing your valuable time with me. I can't thank you enough. It means the world to me, and it helps me expand my map and think about how to come back and deliver for you guys on Friday. And remember that our next workshop is Friday. It's going to be completely different, a whole nother topic, more skills, more competencies, but we'll also kind of maybe do a little Q&A in the beginning about how you use the things you learned from today's session. So come back and see us on Friday afternoon. And then again, next Wednesday is going to be helping your team with some of the things that we talked about today. But for now, I want you to focus on yourself. So good. All right. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it. I'm so glad that it was time well spent. You're very welcome. So good to have you guys, and we will see you on Friday. Thanks so much.